Good day and welcome back to the Hopkins demonstration forest. This is part 9 of what is a forest. And last time in part 8 I used a term, a management decision. And I wanted to follow up today and talk a little bit about what I meant by saying a management decision. So I'm down here on Grouse Hollow Road and I'm between two different stands that we're managing. And you can see right here a sign that if you do come out to Hopkins, or actually a lot of different places in Oregon, the Oregon Small Woodlands Association makes these signs that outline so people walking through the forest, if they're open like we are to the public, can get an idea what's going on. So right behind me, if you can see there, it's a nice stand. Mostly, if you looked up into the canopy, Douglas fir. There are a few western red cedar mixed in with a couple big leaf maple. But this stand was harvested and replanted by the Hopkins family back in 1977. Then we came through in 1999 and did what's called a thinning. So a thinning is where you come in and kind of what the word kind of leads you to. You take out a few of the trees, you thin them out. So that's a harvest and a management decision. You know, that all started back in 1977. When Howard initiated a management decision by harvesting it. Planting, thinning out, so reducing the density, that competition, giving the trees the space they need to grow and those resources, mostly down here, the sunlight. And then we came back here in 1913 and thinned it a second time. So what's the result of that thinning and that management decision? Well, I used that increment core last time. And what I have right here now is, rather than coring a tree, I have a cross section of one of the trees that was harvested back a few years ago. It actually was a wind throw that came down. You can see here in the center, if you look at the color and go out, you can see where the heartwood is, the sapwood, and the bark that came off this. But this tree, if you do the math, counted the rings, looked at the sign back there, it's a little over 40 years old, and about the time this is actually 41 years old are the number of rings on here. So just very close to that age, and again, cut a couple years ago. It was a wind throw. So you notice the rings growing quite evenly. Nice. If I count them off, they'd be pretty evenly spaced. Of course, as you get out, a tree gets bigger, it will slow down, even if it's getting everything it needs, because that's a lot of surface area. As a tree gets bigger, those rings, if they stay the same size, it's a lot more area if you figure out how much surface area is in each ring. So that tree, this is an average one of the trees out there that's stronger, kind of a dominant Douglas fir that was in the canopy. So again, growing very well. Another thing we can do is measure some of those trees. And we went out there and measured some of the diameters. If I can get that in the screen here well. Very basic map. We're gonna go through and figure out how to make one of these, but you look at the distribution down here on the bottom, or the x-axis, I don't have it labeled, that's diameter. So the tree diameter, how big across it is. And then over here are the number of trees going up and down. So you can kind of see here in this graph, it's a nice, we call it a normal bell-shaped curve. So what we've done is taken out a lot of the small trees in our thinning operation, allowed some of those trees to get a little bigger. We're going to spin around and I'm going to show you another stand and talk about it. And then we're going to be able to compare that tree cookie that I just showed you to another one and take a look at this graph. But this graph right here, we're going to be working on this in the coming months on the techniques and tools that we need in order to get some of this information and a little bit more, not just about the size around, but how tall the trees are and how much volume. But let's spin around and take a look at another stand. So again, a little over 40 years old that you're looking at, thinned a couple times. But now let's spin around. And you'll see Grouse Hollow Road as we come around. And there we go. So now if you look behind me in the stand, and I will actually do a 30-second, maybe 60-second 3D video right here so you can You can look around a little bit with your phone or on your computer and put that on the YouTube channel. But you look behind me now. There's no sign, of course, so it doesn't give the answer away. But think about if you could get into this forest a little bit, you'll notice looking back. It's hard to see maybe on the video. Some of the trees are a little bit smaller. There's a lot more of them. But this stand right behind me is actually the same stand that we just looked at. It was planted after it was harvested in 1977. Same tree species, same bag of seedlings, or the delivery of seedlings, planted by Howard and Margaret Hopkins and probably a few other friends or family members. But the same exact stand, same exact age. What's different with this stand is we didn't do any thinning in it. It's kind of what we consider our control. So if I show you a tree cookie of one of the, and this is a little further up in one of the trees. This isn't the base, because this is about I measured about an 8-inch diameter tree. If we go and count the rings, you can really see now the heartwood, especially when the growth is a little bit slower. It really stands out a little better. The sapwood, if you count those rings, I get, again, about 41 rings in that tree. So same age. What's happening though? Well, this tree from the very beginning, it had a little bit of a slow start, but started growing pretty okay. I wouldn't say it was overly impressed, but it definitely was not struggling. Then somewhere out about 10 or 15 years, things slowed down. And then when it got out here to the last really 20 years, the tree basically shut off. And this tree was basically a couple years from death, dying from mortality and competition. So, a management decision. What did that management decision do for us? Well, in the stand that I just showed you, that management decision allowed us to keep the health of the trees growing strong. One of our goals and objectives out here is one of those core benefits, income and an economic benefit. So that economic benefit was the harvesting of the timber, not only the lumber and the logs that went to the mill. So that was one of the management decisions that was made, but also the health of the forest. So if I were to show you a graph of the forest behind me now, this is the same exact scale. So on the bottom, I have diameter. Over here, I have the number of trees. And I'm sorry, I didn't say that before. That's per acre. You notice, look how many small trees. And this isn't a nice, even bell-shaped curve. It's kind of slanting down. And this is a typical spread of trees. These are the same trees, again, Douglas fir, that we get when we don't do a management or thinning harvest, and the trees start competing. They self-select. So there were some trees that died off. This was probably planted with about 400 trees, maybe a little lower, trees per acre. And right now, if I count these all up, the stand behind me has 240. So that's the question, is where did those trees go? Well, the management decision here was let the forest grow, let the trees compete, and natural mortality was the result. So if I compare these two graphs, and you can look at them side by side, the stand that we first looked at, if I counted those up, I got 110 trees per acre. So 240 in the stand that's behind me right now, duck out of the way, and the stand we just looked at, 110. And the big difference is we were capturing some of that mortality that was going to happen before it did. And if I recompare those two tree cookies, you can kind of see the difference 40 years later, what you get when we make management decisions. Now, this may not be the management decision that everyone's looking for. Maximize value and volume. We do that here at Hopkins because we're only 140 acres. We try to imitate what a small woodland owner would want to do. Maximize their income and the use of their land to the best of their abilities. So that means to do some intensive management. But here at Hopkins, we also have other objectives. I think there was a recreator just walking behind me. We have dog walkers. We have families that come out. We have tons and tons in a normal non-COVID year, school groups that come out and explore our forest. So we have a lot of recreation. as well as we have areas that we've set aside and selected for wildlife. So a management decision really depends on your objective. And you have to go back to those three core benefits: the environmental, the social, and the economic benefit. You take those three, it kind of makes a triangle. And every landowner out there has a different way they shape their triangle. One side might be longer. Maybe that landowner values wildlife. So that environmental side might be stretched out. Maybe a landowner really values the income. They purchase the piece of property and are managing it to generate income so they can maybe pay for their grandchild or their son or daughter's college, let's say, or it's just supplemental income. Some people have a very even, like here at Hopkins, I think we probably focus on more of an equilateral triangle because we have so much recreation, we're open to the public. We do focus on areas and have reserves for wildlife, but we also have that focus on income so we can sustain our operations here. So every landowner is different, but a management decision is one that looks at the objectives, whether that be the environment, the social aspect, the recreation, the economic, the income, and whatever mix they have to do the best they can. So right behind me, for our purpose, this was a demonstration. We are the Hopkins Demonstration Forest. So the stand behind me here, the control stand, if we were to get in there and look around, which we will be diving in some future videos, measuring some trees, about half of those trees, if you really look close at them, dead or near death. There's a lot of mortality happening. So that for our purpose is not a good idea because we have such a small patch of land. But you have to think about too, that's a demonstration, but also animals don't have a, some animals love certain types of forests. Some animals don't have a preference. But while we might not like this from an economic return, it doesn't mean that it doesn't have an environmental benefit. Risk of wildfire here is, well, it was a pretty tough year here in 2020 with wildfires. But fuel-wise, we're not heavily loaded. The odds and chances of a fire coming here are very slim, and during very rare events like we had here in 2020. So this has maybe a wildlife benefit. Some animals do prefer or have a tendency to lean towards a forest type like this. Some animals like the first one I showed you, which I'll go back to here real quick. But regardless of your management decision, you go back to those core benefits, and we're going to be talking about how to collect information so you can make a good decision based on your objectives. I hope that gave you a little more information about some of the things we do out here at Hopkins. And the reason we have so many different units out here and management styles, we're a demonstration forest, but every landowner, large or small, uses those objectives, makes decisions, and so it makes forestry kind of fun. Everything's different. Kind of like cooking and making a recipe. Everyone has a little different twist on it sometimes. Hopefully that was good. You can please go to the video. I'm going to put a little 30-second, 60-second video that's 360, so you could look around and look up at the canopies a little bit more and compare the two. And go to the YouTube page for that. But please come on back and enjoy these videos, and look forward to seeing you again. Thanks a lot.